I think Karolina Ahmed has been one of our most honest guests yet. She speaks honestly about what it's like to be a female entrepreneur, starting a successful aesthetics practice, and her struggle with fertility. Lithuania to London. Here's Karolina's story. Hey, and welcome back to this episode of Work This Way. We're in Wandsworth Town today, SW18 London, and we are joined by the lovely Karolina Ahmed.
Hello, thank you for having me, Adam.
You are more than welcome. You are a star of Foundry Walthamstow. You know I love having you on the ground floor there. Keeping it real. Keeping all those other rowdy ground floor amenity retailers in check. Cove 17, Jazz and the boys. Our brilliant dog groomers. And of course, your next door neighbour, Rowena, as well. Face Up is a very professional business, and it's something that I know you've been building for years, but it's fair to say the culmination of it over the last 2 years at Foundry in Walthamstow has been incredible. And to watch you go on your own journey, I know that you could easily double, triple the size of your studio right now, and I know that we're trying to do something about that with you. So thank you.
Do you remember I had sort of like a couple of years ago, well, not even a couple, maybe like sort of like the end of last year, I had that urge to expand. And, you know, it's like that little itch that needs scratching. Mm-hmm. And I was, a little obsessed, I guess, for a little while. But the truth is with Walthamstow, because I've been living in Walthamstow for so long and I previously worked at Whipps Cross Hospital as a midwife, you get to know your community, Adam. You get to know your customers. You get to know what people like. And the truth is, I feel really secure and happy. And, my daughter is now 5 years old and she goes to school around the corner and, we live around the corner. We're homeowners. Expanding sort of like, I came to realize that by growing a business, you have to sacrifice quite a lot of yourself. I want to be present there for my daughter. I think it's a really crucial age. So as it happens, I'm actually really happy. And I think we kind of like had difficulty deciding as to, so which part of London we'd like to expand to. And I almost feel that every hurdle we had was for a very good reason, because it was just not meant to be at the time.
We'll revisit it when the time's right.
Absolutely. And there's no races there. Yeah. Why can't it be done 3-4 years later when my daughter Amaya is a little bit older and I have, more free time on my hands?
We'll have some more locations for you to choose from.
Well, there we are.
Good stuff. Well, let's get stuck into your story. Let's roll back a little bit. Let's get back to pre-Walthamstow.
I came from Lithuania when I was 15 years old with my mum. And the plan was to always stay. And here we are.
Did you speak English?
We studied American English back in Lithuania. Yeah. And I was saying there used to be a lot of candies.
Right, yeah.
And cookies, and all of a sudden it was like biscuits and sweets.
Yeah.
And accent took a little while to adjust to. But then I think, Adam, I see it with my own daughter now. Children are so adaptable, to sort of like when you're young, your brain is like a sponge. You just, absorb so much in such a short space of time. I really can't remember that being a difficult time.
Did you go straight into school? So 15, you've been doing your GCSEs, right? So
I've actually completed my GCSEs back in Lithuania, but because of my language barrier, I already knew I wanted to be a midwife. I was already sort of advised at that point, when I guess my parents were, for me to repeat my GCSEs, at least 1 year of it, just to consolidate my English so that my A-levels are subsequently, easier for me so that I can progress to university.
And you knew then you wanted to study midwifery. That was what you wanted to be, a midwife at that age.
Do you know what? It sounds really strange, but I did.
Yeah.
Back home, my mum is an accountant and she did very long hours. And my mum's sister lived next door to us, and she was pregnant at the time. And I remember just having to tag along to many of her appointments. And is sort of that idea that I'd like to be a midwife has always been there.
Mm-hmm.
But strangely, apparently, I'm told that I used to say if midwifery didn't work out, I'd be a funeral director. So yes, a
Really? One
very
extreme to the other.
exactly.
Yeah.
So very
Yeah.
strange career backup plan for a
There's still
10-year-old.
room for.
But I know
all time.
exactly. But you see, clearly, I was always drawn to either the very beginning or the very end of life. So
Yeah. Wow. You knew what you wanted to be at 15, way before then.
do you know, the thing is, I think I obviously can't recall the sort of the thinking process at that age, but I do remember very clearly the gynecologist and the midwife that was looking after my auntie. They were both females wearing stethoscopes around their necks. They were in their scrubs. And you know, Adam, we're going back so many years ago in sort of like a country that was just, you know, recently post-Soviet Union. Most of the doctors were men. So I felt sort of that environment where women were in charge at a time where they were expected to be housewives.
Yeah,
just
hugely
felt quite
inspiring.
powerful.
Yeah.
And I feel that's what really resonated with me. It wasn't about the babies. It was just being there for women. And sort of that sense of empowerment has kind of stayed with me ever since.
Love that. And that's why you're such a boss as an entrepreneur. So you're 9, and clearly you are fascinated by midwifery because you're inspired by these ladies that are turning up wearing stethoscopes. And as you say, in a country that only a few years before was Soviet, right?
That's right.
I mean, what a time, what a moment in time that must have been. Was there a moment at 9 or whenever this was where the penny dropped?
I think it was watching the actual video of my cousin being born, and again through the changes that the government was sort of like going. For the very first time, men were allowed into the labor room, and my uncle filmed the whole thing. So my mom and my grandmother were there around my auntie's place waiting for my uncle to come home. And when he came home with this like, you know, old school videotape, I was allowed to be in the room to watch it. Everybody knew how much I waited for my little cousin to come about and how close I was to my auntie. And that was a really proud moment for me because nobody knew, like no other kids were allowed in. And there was like my uncle still feeling like faint and nauseated, but what he has so clearly traumatized. My mom was crying, my grandmother was restless, and I just sat there perfectly still, just completely fascinated, and just everything felt so normal. I just like I wished I was in the room
Amazing.
at the time when she was actually giving birth. There was just no like, oh my God, this looks terrible or scary. I was like, this is amazing.
And this is your little cousin.
We're very close. That's right. She's 22 now.
What's her name?
Katrina.
And where is she in the world?
She's in Lithuania,
Yeah.
but she's very present in our lives.
Excellent.
She makes a great auntie to my daughter.
Wow. So if we roll back to 2013, you've done your GCSEs, you've gone into university, you've studied, you're now qualified as a midwife. You've taken a job at Whipps Cross. And if you fast forward 11 years as a midwife, the highs, the lows, I can imagine emotional turmoil in that job. It must be, you never know what you're going to walk into, right? The relationships that you formed. Yeah, give us a bit of insight into that world. Is it like the TV show?
I think being a midwife is, and I know it sounds cliche, but I really do mean that wholeheartedly. It's a very rewarding job. You are sucked into the community, and sort of the satisfaction is like no other. What comes as part of the job is also sort of this close bond with your work colleagues. You work in very challenging environment, very highly sort of pressured environment. You are dealing with life and death most of the time. So whenever you're unsure, or if you are new, if there is an emergency, the team rallies around you, and you spend so much time together going through sort of the thick and thin. That some of the friends that I still have, and the like very dear family friends, are from those times when we worked together.
Is it like the show Call the Midwife? Does it represent?
Call the Midwife on steroids.
Call the Midwife on steroids. Yeah. Call the Midwife at Whip's Cross. Yeah.
That's exactly that. And what we have to remember that, East London, perhaps back then when I trained, was a very deprived community, and it has moved a long way now.
Yeah. I mean, you were looking after babies in Leytonstone and Leighton and Stratford and Bethnal Green and
Walthamstow. That's right.
Walthamstow, yeah.
So we used to see cases that perhaps other regions of London wouldn't. We had a couple of colleagues from the university that have trained and stayed to work at hospitals like UCLH. And, whenever we had a little gathering and would share sort of like, little stories, they would be so fascinated. And we always used to say, if you can work at Whip's Cross, you can work anywhere in the world. But, the workload was heavy. It was at the time where NHS was shifting to paperless. So we had to document absolutely everything, and admin was really heavy. We did a lot of nights, especially sort of if you are a newly qualified midwife and the elderly have done their fair share. It was your turn to keep the hospital grounded. The physical exhaustion and the stress started to affect my own fertility, ironically.
Yeah.
And we always have a little joke around the wood. If midwifery teaches you anything, is that life has its own sense of humor. So
you're at a stage in your life now, you want to start your own family. What was going on around that time, and how did you deal with it?
I didn't deal with it very well at all, if I'm completely honest. I think being a midwife and constantly being in the environment where people are having children can be really challenging. And, we're all human. I'm from flesh and bone. And I can only be honest that I had feelings of jealousy and, even feelings of resentment at times. So it got to the point where I really had to check in on myself and make sure that my mental health was doing okay. And I also had to be fair to the women that I was looking after. I think having feelings of jealousy and resentment can impact your professional judgment. And it got to the point where the hospital was going through some internal changes, and I made a decision to step away.
So you step away from midwifery. What came next?
Whilst I was working as a full-time midwife, I had this little taboo hobby, and I did injectables. I was obviously fully trained. The training was really hard at the time, not like now.
Injectables as in
anti-wrinkle injections,
right, yeah.
derma fillers.
Yeah.
And the reason I say taboo, because do you know what, Adam, sort of like 10, 11 years ago, the only people that were having filler were the rich and the famous.
Of course, yeah.
So when normal people, ordinary people started having tweakments, it was a bit like, oh my
Tweakments.
gosh.
There we go.
That's right.
Tweakments.
But I always liked doing things out of the ordinary, and I like being controversial, I guess. So when I stepped away from midwifery, that was an opportunity for me to do something with my injectable experience, and I was very lucky to land a very good job as aesthetic nurse at a clinic with Mr. Alex Carides, who's a very famous plastic surgeon. He liked the way I injected, but his manager at the time, Kimberly, who is now a very dear family friend, was a person that everybody needs once in a lifetime. Adam, she pushed me beyond belief. I took every skin course, laser course, energy device course, and it was really sort of challenging at the time, but that's what really opened the doors into aesthetics for me.
Right. So that was the turning point for you. And I presume through all this period, you're trying for a baby and you're going through the whole fertility piece, right? So is that all overlapping at this point with your daughter? So must be about 5 years ago, right? 5-6 years ago.
That's right. So what has happened, because so when we sort of struggled to have a family, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovaries, which is, non-life threatening, but it can take a really long while to get pregnant. So my diagnosis was very simple. I wasn't ovulating, and I will need a little help, from the doctors. And the safest option was for me to go through, IVF. Now, we was very lucky at the time because we just moved to Walthamstow, and we were granted 3 cycles, but there was a waiting list. When I was at the Caridis clinic, I was so fully focused, fitting into my new job role and taking on all these courses, that I really just took a step back, and sort of stopped thinking about getting pregnant. That really gave some breathing space for myself and for my husband, really. And as life would have it, whilst I was waiting for my IVF, I got pregnant. I got pregnant with twins. Naturally, we have twins in our family, which I sadly miscarried. And it sounds sort of like, miscarriage is so common, and it sounds really traumatic, but to be honest, it was so emotionally consuming. I was just really relieved that it was all over. And one thing that I really took away from it, with the sort of like difficulty getting pregnant, having miscarriages, is just sort of like letting go of things. I think I'm definitely a control freak, and that was one of the things that really I struggled with.
But you got pregnant.
I know, but then
Yeah.
you miscarry, and you just completely have no control over it. There's absolutely nothing you can do about it, and it's what drives you crazy.
So dealing with your miscarriage, and then the success of pregnancy and gorgeous daughter, and the person that you became, and actually what came next for you. I suppose that's what I'm quite interested in, how you went on that journey.
Just naturally, it was really hard. Miscarriage is very challenging physically, but also emotionally. And I had all sorts of thoughts in my head. Number one, am I going to have to try for another year before I qualify for IVF? So I had to check in with my doctor. That's going to be a couple of months. But it's also being around pregnant women again. And I know I keep coming back to that, but it's just it's a reality that a lot of women live in, and we just don't talk about it. I went back to work a week later, and my dear colleague, Lou, who's just the loveliest person, was also pregnant at the time. So on the very first day I came back, she didn't know I was coming back.
Right.
And she walked in with a baby on board badge, and Adam, it just completely overwhelmed me.
Yes.
Said hello. I went into the treatment room where I was going to be working that day. I just sat down, just really choking, really. I still feel like sort of like emotional remembering, because Lou is a nurse, and she's just very good with people, and she knew exactly what I was going through. And she came into the room and just sat down next to me, just cuddled me, and we sobbed in silence. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. And the point from this is that I think as a society, we are told to not share pregnancy news until much later, just in case something goes wrong, just to spare ourselves from having to explain. But I was really glad I had people around me in that moment. And I think there was real strength in being open and supported. And then me and my husband decided to take a little break, and we went on a vacation. We went to Morocco and had a jolly good time in Marrakesh, clearly because we came back pregnant.
Hey. Yeah.
And so
No IVF. It was
completely natural.
Yeah.
And Adam, that says something about sort of the mindset and the stress. I went from not ovulating in years to having 2 pregnancies in under 12 months.
Roll forward 5 years, and she's at school today.
And she's just such a lovely girl.
So you didn't go straight into aesthetics. So you had your had your daughter, and you took a different career path at this point. So I remember meeting you on the cusp of Face Up a few years ago now in Waltham Forest. What came next?
After Amaya was born, I had this really big calling. I knew exactly how sort of longing for the baby can feel, and I felt I could do more. So what I did then is I quickly left my nurse aesthetic role, and I went and retrained as a fertility midwife. And that's what I did until I met you.
Wow.
But it's interesting because being a fertility midwife, and again, being sort of under the guidance of the hospital, and we have so many policies and rules for all the very good reasons. At that point, I also felt that I wanted to decide how I want to care for people.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what sort of gave me an idea that
Were you
maybe
back in the
it's...
NHS or
No, so fertility,
privately?
that was all
Yeah.
private. And it was a very good exposure. I've learned so much and met some amazing people that were going through most difficult times. But it was at that point when I decided that I've actually got such a good background and knowledge and experience in aesthetics that maybe it's time I opened up my own business and decided for myself, the hours that I'm going to work. And that was really helpful having a young child at home. And that's how the idea of Face Up was born.
Face Up. Where did Face Up come from? So where did the name Face Up? When was there a moment you were like, oh, this is what I'm going to call my business?
I think sort of it sounds very cliche, but many people might not see it that way. But I feel there is a real link between midwifery and aesthetics. It was always about being there for people at their most vulnerable. And Adam, I do a great deal of counseling when I'm at work. I should charge extra. That's just part of the job.
I'm sure. Yeah.
And when I first started in aesthetics, because it was so taboo, my main clientele was just this bunch of Lithuanian women that perhaps didn't speak great English, and they trusted me.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my way of helping them feel confident in their own skin, and just really carried on in that sense. It's, started with a woman, giving their confidence in how they feel. It's obviously expanded to now we see people from all sorts of walks of life, men, transgender, non-binary. But it's helping people reconnect with themselves, and sort of by the time they leave, they're more in touch with who they are. So, Face Up, it was a little bit like Nose Up. You don't need to be ashamed.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to change, who are we to tell you that you can't?
So you've got a little baby. You've retrained as a fertility midwife. You've decided now to start your own business. You're going to go into the murky world of self-employment. Incredibly brave move, that stage of your life. You've got the why. You've got the brand for Face Up. You know why you're doing it. You've, at this point, I've probably met you at this point, and I could see just how driven you were and how determined you were, and how your brand, your mission was so important to you. And that's what really impressed me. I can remember how impressed I was by, remember going back and telling my business partners at Legal in General just how impressive you were.
Thank you.
And we always talk about you as an example, by the way, when we talk about types of specific occupiers, members, especially in the practitioner studios that we're delivering across the UK now. I guess your journey into Face Up, your story of why you decided to go out on your own, because that was a big step at that stage of your life.
I just don't think there was a real strategy or a business plan I knew I had to transition. I knew that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to care for people in my own way. I knew I wanted to stay in Waltham Forest. I've been serving that community since I was a student midwife. We actually moved from North London to East London so I could be closer to work. And I just really I thought I'm just gonna go with it. And you are absolutely right. At that time when we did meet, I looked at lots of other premises before them, but it was really interesting. And I think, I can be confident in saying that there are so many businesses that pitch to our council that they're there for our community, but yet myself and a few other people in Walthamstow, whenever we approached these private landlords, they were not interested in local small businesses, and they were just after the change. And I really do feel that our Foundry was the only one that delivered it.
I think it was an incredibly bold move by you at that stage of your life, and I take my hat off to you. I take my hat off to you throughout your life, really, to come over at 15, to not really speak the language, to redo your GCSEs, to train as a midwife, to know when enough was enough, to call time on your professional career. And my thank you. Thank you so much for your honesty today. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure listening, there'll be entrepreneurs that are going through a similar life stage, starting a family, and all the struggles that come with that and everything that you've spoken about today. Would you mind if someone reached out to you just for a chat, a bit of advice?
Not at all. I think I'm very open, and it's almost hard to stay professional in that sense. I form a bond with a lot of my customers. I can resonate and relate so easily. And I think for myself, coming from the environment or the background where nothing was handed over to me, you know, we had to work for it. I've learned very early on, Adam, that you can moan about it, you can be scared about it. As Miley Cyrus says, you have to stand up and do it anyway. So if anybody's interested to come and meet me, I'm very open for a chat.
Find you at Foundry Walthamstow. Thank you so much, and wish you all the very best.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karolina. That was an open, honest Foundry member who I've had the privilege of getting to know over the last couple of years. If you get the opportunity, visit Karolina in her practice in Foundry Walthamstow.